This is in CRPC that I'll be talking about, not HSPC. But the deck of options in CRPC is quite extensive and can't be fit into one slide. Although the observation is that of late, we have started to go towards more targeted therapy on the biology and the genome. So let me talk a little about the biology. About a couple of years after the Cell Robinson et al. Stand Up to Cancer publication, we, in my previous institution, published this in the Annals, which was a metastatic biopsy study, cohort study, prospective cohort study, in which one of the things that caught our attention, this was qualitatively different from Stand Up to Cancer in many patient eligibility criteria. But one of the things that caught our attention was that chromosomes 6 and 8 had a lot of alterations, and apart from the other usual actors of PTEN, RB1, AR, etc. And so we were very interested in finding out whether there's a clinical readout in the copy number based alterations in the genome in CRPC. And in this particular study, this was this study schema in which solid biopsies and liquid biopsies were taken concurrently, and 3 months of abiraterone was being given, and then serial biopsies were being done on all of them. So I'm going to talk about the lower part, about the liquid biopsy based copy number alteration score that we then identified from initially from 24 genes, then went down to 23, and then to 11, wherein we put that together in terms of a composite score, a risk score that will have a clinical readout. And the initial part was for overall survival as a prognostic marker, and then the later part was also for progression-free survival. We took the liquid biopsy part of this particular cohort study and found that if you had a score above the median in this particular cohort, you did poorly, and your progression-free survival was lower and was shorter. And then we took a real-world cohort in the third diagram over here, which showed us the same kind of readout. Now, the range of the score is important to remember in these cohorts was noted to be between 0.3 and 3, with at least 33% of people who had a score of 1.0 and above, which is the summation of this particular whole thing. So now, because we had solid biopsies available of the liquid biopsies that we did the scoring in, everyone says it's the gold standard, but I beg to differ. It's probably not. This data is already submitted in dbGaP, so it's already over there for anyone to take a look at, which is what we approached. And what we found was when we compared the concurrent biopsies between the two, liquid and solid, in the pre-treatment, this is all treatment-naive CRPC patients, and adjusted for tumor purity in the solid biopsies and the ctDNA in the liquid biopsies, at the lower panel, you will see that the androgen receptor, for example, amplification is caught in the red solid diagram bars in the solid, and the pink ones being in the liquid. And NKX 3.1 loss is caught equally in both. But the observation over here is in the middle panel. When you don't have good tumor purity, you don't get good catches based on solid tissue metastatic biopsies, but you can get it using the liquid score, or the liquid part as such. So anyway, we took the score in the solid biopsies and then tried to look at the outcomes again. And again, in this cohort of metastatic tissue biopsies, the readout again is that the higher the score, poor the outcome, and poor the progression-free survival. As a pharmacodynamic marker, because we had serial biopsies, what we found is that primary resistance to abiraterone, the score goes up, both in liquid and solid as such. So potentially some use in the future as such. These are, I'd like to remind, paired metastatic biopsies that we're looking at. So then after that, what do we do? Well, we had more independent cohorts to verify this. And we went to see Bioportal, and out of the 444 patients, there were about 160 who were pre-treatment, who were biopsied, metastatic site biopsies, of which 93 were those who had full data, including clinical readouts. And then I went to Alex Wyatt in his Vancouver prostate cancer liquid biopsy cohort to look at these independent cohorts for this particular score. And what we find is that the score keeps coming back positive in terms of a clinical readout in all of this for overall survival and for progression-free survival. We have gotten more than 1,000 biopsies, tissue, liquid, etc., which keep giving us this particular range. So where do we go with this? Well, here is where we go with this. We've got precedent in breast cancer when a score which captures heterogeneity of 16 gene expression molecules over here, and then it was randomized in the Taylor RX study, which had a readout in terms of that if the score is low for patients undergoing post mastectomy, do not give them chemotherapy. That was practice changing, and perhaps we should do something of that nature over here. But here is what we do. I try to put all the trials in CRPC into a statement. The vision and magnitude of the Cougars propelled progress and affirmed that a peaceful addition of new therapeutics to the initially approved docetaxel chemotherapy in CRPC will prevail. I still couldn't get everything over there. This is not precise, although only recently we have turned to this. And so, what we really wanted to do with the score is design a simulation exercise of how can we use an assay based enrichment study design with 80% power to detect an overall survival as measured with a hazard ratio as written in front of you and maintaining those power statistics. There are two terms I'll use now: enrichment threshold and enrichment fraction. Because there was a range on the score, how do you enrich a patient type to based on a particular CNA score? That's called the enrichment threshold. And then enrichment fraction. How many patients should be enriched with that particular threshold to design a trial? And here is what we find. Across the enrichment threshold and with the percentage of fraction of patients, you can have different power numbers in across for a 2 and a 3 year outcome. And we chose those yellow cells over there as the most pragmatic approach, that patients in CRPC with a score of 1 and more, who have 33% of the patient population will have that, but enrich them by 25% more to get at least 50% of the patients in a biomarker enrichment trial design, so that you have 880 patients to screen and 580 patients approximately to randomize to a control arm versus a control arm with a novel treatment, which would be perhaps much more enriching and rather than the kind of trials we have done in CRPC in the past. You need an assay for this. And the assay is something that we are developing right now and is being currently presented at the Association of Molecular Pathology at Vancouver right now. And all that I'll say is that liquid biomarker working group with FNIH, which I'm working with along with Jacob Burchuk at Emory, we are looking for sites and working with industry, both assay developers and big pharma, to look at 3 particular drugs for developing these kinds of scores in the future with assays. And this is a project that will take time, but we are looking for a couple of sites. If you're interested, I'll be very happy to talk to you. Thank you so much.